Matt, welcome to the Do the Work podcast.
Thank you for the invitation.
No problem at all. So, delighted to have you here today. Um, Someone who knows a lot more about walking than me, so I'm keen to have a really cool conversation with you.
Okay.
Big into walking, big into hiking, but something that you've obviously done for the last 10 years, I think you said.
Well, I've been walking since I've been a baby, obviously, like all of us have, but a greater awareness about delivering walking and training people to walk well. And that's been the last sort of 10 years, really.
Amazing. So, so that's something that you've managed to make into part of your, I suppose, your career, if you will. But before we get to that point, we had a conversation when we spoke about doing this, and you told me about your journey into that in terms of why you got into that. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that so we can get a bit of an understanding about the background of Matt and why you put so much effort, I suppose, into health and fitness and walking now?
Yes, I suppose what we've spoken about was that maybe midlife crisis or awakening. I was 36. At that time, I thought that I looked like I was 50 and thought that I felt like I was 50. I was 3 stone overweight. I was that kind of body type that's thin on the outside, fat on the inside. So I carried the fat around my internal organs, which all the doctors will say is not the best place to carry that, and that can lead to that kind of problems with the blood parameters and things like that. But at that moment in time, you have no concept of that. You might hear it on the news or whatever, but you just discount that. It's not your problem. So I had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, was overweight, chronic back and neck problems from a previous life of living in the Czech Republic, having my own business as a translator, working 16 hours a day at the computer, leaning over the desk, sat down, which creates those postural imbalances and those issues. So all that being said, I still wasn't motivated to change that in my life, but there was one moment in time when my son was 4 years old and he had a bunk bed in his bedroom and I couldn't lift him into his bunk bed. And that was probably the thing that broke the camel's back. So it was, who am I now and who do I want to be for him? And can I be the best version of myself and the role model for him? And at that point, it was like, right, there's stuff going on with my blood parameters, my health, my weight. That I wasn't overly bothered about, but the fact that I couldn't be that role model to my son was a big thing. So that then made me conceive in my own mind a plan. This was kind of a couple of months before Christmas time, the end of the year, where there's that kind of general impetus for people to write the goals for the coming year and make some change and this, that, and the other. And I said, right, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to work on getting somewhere, lose the weight, improve the parameters of my health that I had no real concept of where to and how to do that. But I set off in the January, did that and got through to December to a point where I was like, holy shit, I was completely different in shape, in size, in weight, in body fat percentage, in blood parameters and strength, and just felt amazing. And so I actually got some photographs done professionally, which was like this kind of before and after. And quite often people, if they go and see a personal trainer, the personal trainer might encourage that client to have a before picture and after picture, because that becomes that kind of testimonial. It's something for that customer to kind of grasp hold of. That was me then, that's me now, and then what next? So I did that, and I surpassed the possibility of what I thought was available to me, but I realised it's just me. I'm just Matt, just an ordinary guy, had these problems, said I was going to do something and achieved that. So it wasn't just about the health and the weight, it was about the realisation that I could set an intention and then surpass where I thought I could get to. So then I was like, oh, right, I've got to do something now. I've got to shout from the rooftops about that and tell people about it. And as people go through that process, they then start shouting from the rooftops about that. And quite often you'll find that not all people are as enthused and inspired in that moment from you and what you're saying, because they're on their own life path, their own journey. They've not got the same challenges you have. And so that kind of struck me as, this is amazing what I've done, and I've got to work out how to do something about that. And that was what then ultimately led me into finding Nordic walking as an activity. Trained up to be a Nordic walking instructor, and Nordic walking is essentially walking with poles, but it's an adaptation of walking. You become a four-legged creature. When you're walking on your own 2 feet, you are just effectively using your legs. When you're using the poles with the right posture, the right technique, you activate the upper body, you're toning your tummy, your arms, your back. Again, I'd come from that history of working 16-hour days behind a computer, the back and neck problems. I went to see a physio who lectures at UCLan University, who was operating also in his private time from the gym I was training at. And he has trained Olympic level athletes or worked with them. And he said, I've never seen a back so bad at the time that he was treating me. So he did a lot of work on me. He was a physio. I went to see a chiropractor. But I also realised that I'd gone from before to after, got the pictures. But in that very moment, that it doesn't define the rest of your life. You achieve that, and you've got, and so I was 37. Well, I'm now feeling that I'm not 50. I don't look like I'm 50. I don't feel like I'm 50, and I want to live till I'm 100. And a lot of people talk about that. There are different levels of awareness and understanding about living to 100 once you get further down your life. So we'll maybe talk about that later. But I knew what I'd set out to do. I'd achieved that, and I was like, right, the world is my oyster. I can change my finances, change my relationships, change how I appear to my son. And got involved in this Nordic walking and just started off on that path and started teaching people to walk. And like I said, I've trained over 1,000 people to Nordic walk. And in that journey over the last 10 years, just meeting people, being with people, being in the outdoor space has been that mirror, a reflection for me. And I've been able to develop myself and seen so many different things about myself and about life and about how you can expand as an individual to achieve many great things. I'm probably waffling now, I don't know.
No, it's fine. I think the common trait that I see is something that I've literally read today from one of my clients there, is that you feel much more powerful and empowered in yourself, in your ability to do things, which is exactly, or to paraphrase what you kind of said there. And that's really common, I find, with my clients when they prove to themselves that they can do something that they didn't think that they could do, or when they surpass what they thought was possible, which is often even, whether that be a number on the scales or starting from being on the couch to going and doing a half marathon or whatever the goal is. It then opens up opportunity to do things anywhere else in life with regards to, as you mentioned, like finance, relationships, all of that. And that's
Definitely.
a really, really common trait. Let's go back, before we get into the walking stuff, let's go back to around when you were starting. Before you did start, what were the barriers that stopped you from starting until that sort of aha moment? Okay, now I've got to do something with the bunk bed scenario with your son. What was in the way before that meant that you didn't look after yourself effectively?
I think what's important to realise for myself is that I wasn't looking after myself as well as I could do at that moment in time, but I'd always been quite sporty, quite active. So again, that's something that maybe listeners need to be aware of. You don't hit a bottom or a breaking point and that means that everything else before was completely broken. It might not be. But you don't know what you don't know. And so if you haven't got the awareness about the massive possibility for you as an individual that anything is possible, and maybe just by seeing another individual having some level of success in their career or with their finances or with their relationship, that is another expression of a human on the planet, and if they've done it, you can do it as well. And that was kind of where I got to with the after. I was, well, I'm just Matt, and I've got this result, and I'm shouting from the rooftops. But you've got to kind of, in that moment, to connect with someone, you've got to say something that reaches out to them where they are at that moment. So that's why not everyone seems to be listening. And then it's about, if you want to create some impact or develop a business out of it or whatever, you've got to get your messaging right, and that then you then open up this whole field of how do I get that message out? How do I create a business out of it? And the whole ball of learning there. So you do your education on being a Nordic walking instructor or a personal trainer, and you think, well, I've got that education, and now I'm going to have all these clients knocking down my door, and that doesn't happen. But if you are inspired and it becomes a passion, then it's a case of what do I need to do to learn to get that across to people? And so that has been an ongoing 10-year journey.
Yeah, it's definitely something I think that happens where people achieve something great or big or something they couldn't, or they thought they couldn't do, and then they often want to help others or inspire others with that, which I think is another natural thing that happens when you start to get that result, because most people want other people to be successful, be happy and all of that, and we want to then pass that on to other people, which is what got me started as a PT, and obviously what's got you into the Nordic walking with regards to where you're at now. So I suppose that's a good now opportunity to sort of segue into the Nordic walking stuff. So you've given us a little bit about what that is so far. Who is it that you work with, and where do you do it, and what do you do with them? To give us a little bit more about kind of like what you're doing locally with, it's Walx, isn't it?
Yeah. So the brand that we work under is Walx, that's WALX. We are part of a national structure, so there are many Walx groups across the country. Walx is a sister company to Nordic Walking UK, and that was where it all started, I guess. Nordic walking is considered an activity, a bit like an outdoor cross trainer. It's very much like cross-country skiing, but without the snow, without the skis. So quite often we're walking around the park and people might shout out, "Hey, where's the snow?" You know, it's funny, humorous, but cross-country skiers, whether they're doing cross-country skiing as the activity or they're doing biathlon, where they're both shooting and skiing at the same time, they are considered some of the fittest athletes on the planet because of just the nature of that physical activity. So Nordic walking is the pre-season training for those people who are going to go into cross-country skiing for the winter season. And it is walking with poles, but it's very much a technique. You are prompted to stand tall, hold a good posture, relax your shoulders. Your arms are long and straight. They swing from the shoulder, so you have an arm movement that swings from the shoulder. So like your legs would swing from your hips, your arms are swinging from your shoulder, and they basically, if you were to walk without carrying any bags, if you were to walk at a reasonable pace depending on your level of health and fitness, and you were to look at anybody walking on the street, if they're unencumbered by tension created by some shoulder injury or some gait issue or carrying something, then you'll probably see that their legs are moving like that and their arms are also moving, but contralaterally, so opposite. Mm-hmm. And that is our natural human way of walking. But we become so tense from working those long days, sat down all day behind a computer, that we hold that tension. But then if we hold that tension and we take that back home, and then for whatever reason we are having some issues with our parent is ill, our family member is some issue, we can often contain that tension, whether it's coming from the mind, it goes into the body, or we've got it in the body that then goes into the mind. That makes us act and walk differently. So a lot of what we try and do is in the sessions of teaching Nordic walking is getting poles in people's hands, but allowing them to just relax and breathe and stand tall and feel that nice flow and dynamic movement. And even just that simple step will get some people with tingles down the back, because they'll go, oh my God, I was holding that tension, or I was thinking about this. And there's a great benefit of also being in the outdoor space, that just the expansiveness of the outdoor space, seeing the trees, hearing the birds, maybe having a bit of wind on your face, sunshine on your face, that also has a natural opportunity to allow you to just relax the guard, relax the tension. So we are encouraging people to walk well, And that can be just on your own 2 feet, and you can get a whole host of benefits from that. But then the Nordic walking, and you can read all the benefits online, there's just a whole host of benefits of upscaling that walking into walking with poles. But again, it's very much recommended to do it with an experienced coach or instructor to get you through to that point of anyone could pick up the poles and walk with the poles with the right technique and get all the benefits, but quite often people have certain tension that they're holding in the body. They may feel mentally that they are an uncoordinated type or whatever. So always any learning with a coach or instructor is going to get you to that better next stage. So yeah, we've been doing that for 10 years, and off the back of that, we're part of this national structure, and there are groups across the country, and the idea is that we have an online booking system. People book onto a walk, they know where they're going to go to, they know when they turn up at that location that there's going to be a qualified and an insured and a first aid trained guide and instructor, and that person can just turn up and go, I need to switch off, or I want to activate my body, or I want to clear my mind, I want to speak with some people, so a real good social element to it. But I'm not very good with territory and location. I always get lost. But if I'm with this group, I know that I'm going to get from A to B and back to A, and everything's going to be fine. And what happens is you go on the walk, and we always hear from people, oh, we're finishing now. We've only been out for 10 minutes. Oh, no, we've been out for an hour. Oh, really? And what happens is your mind switches off, your body loosens up, and you dissipate that tension in the mind and the body. And it's just a fantastic modality for ticking a whole bunch of boxes.
Yeah, well, time flies when you're having fun, as they say.
Yes.
I think I totally agree on the being in nature, being outside bit that you were talking about there earlier in the conversation. As you said, most people spend time at desks, slouched over, in dark rooms. Maybe they have windows, maybe not, but they almost never get outside. And a lot of people, even people that go to the gym, they might sit on a desk all day and then go to the gym and then sit on a bike, still not move, be in an air-conditioned gym, and never actually get outside.
Then go home, sit down and eat, then sit and watch TV, then go to bed.
Exactly.
You're missing a trick.
So I think there is massive, anecdotally for me, massive links to how I feel with regards to me being positive or with my mental health, in that I get out every day because I've got a dog, so the dog needs walking every day. And to be honest, that for me is a little bit of a, let's call it, it's a nudge for me to go out and do that. And it's easier for me to go out and walk because I've got the dog. Mm-hmm. Would I be as motivated to do that without that? Not sure. But I definitely wouldn't be getting the benefits from being outside, getting fresh air, having a little bit of time away from my desk and all of that stuff. So these guys and girls that are coming to you are obviously getting that. And I totally agree that that's a massive benefit that almost everyone needs to do more of. Onto the pole side of things, I mentioned to you on the phone, I haven't used them before, so I don't really know much about them. But I do remember I mentioned we did the Peru trek and the base camp trek, and there was a guy in the Peru trek. He was I think he was army perhaps, but he was certainly ex-military, and he brought poles with him, and he never used them once. I think he thought he needed them, because it was like, okay, I'm going on a trek to the Inca Trail, need poles. And then use them for a little bit, and then it was just like, yeah, don't need them, not using them, and then put them back. But again, that probably just comes and stems. That's what I would do, because at the end of the day, I don't know what I'm doing with them. So, like with anything, having effective coaching, which is what you guys do, to get the most out of them and get the best out of them. Which, the guide that took us, the Peruvian guide, he had poles. He goes every week. He'd done that trek. I think he said something like 900 times or something crazy like that. And it's like a 4 or 5 day trek. So he's been doing it for a long time. And then our English guide who took us also used poles, goes on a lot of these trips. So obviously there's a lot of benefit to using them. And what you're doing, I think you mentioned, is like an entry level into this is how you do it. And if you want to take it that next step further, they could then obviously go off and do these trips and stuff like that and have the benefit of having these poles. And I know that a lot of the people that you help are slightly older. And so is it more helpful for them in that there is lower impact, it's easier in terms of to get them started and to do longer distances, etc.? So the word I'm trying to look for, is it a good kind of like entry level thing for them to do, to get from the couch doing nothing or in the office sat down all day to getting them outside? Is that why you find you have a lot more elderly clients?
Yes and no. There is no age restriction to walking with the poles, and there is no fitness level requirement for using the pole. So we can take somebody from the couch, and we can also help somebody who is very fit and strong. Like I said, the precursor to, or the start with Nordic walking comes from that cross-country skier, the fittest athletes on the planet, that full body activation. You can work with the poles and your posture and your technique and get massive benefits. I could tell you the benefits, and you could understand them intellectually, but it's not until a moment of actually trying it and feeling something that almost finger click epiphany sort of happens. So that's my invitation to you. Whenever you're available, you come and give it a go. But and obviously I'm biased because I've been doing this both personally, professionally for the last 10 years. But I don't want to say it's better to walk with the poles, but there are many different things that come out of it. And again, like I said, you have to try it. If you're a little bit unsure, and totally understandable, there are a lot of people apprehensive about walking with poles because they might think someone might shout out, "Where's the snow?" which we get when we're out walking. So if you are a little bit apprehensive, anxious, concerned, then maybe that will affect you. But as an instructor and leading a group here in Preston, of which there are many groups across the country, that is our role, is to make somebody feel comfortable in the moment, give them the opportunity to get the poles in the hand, get them to try it, and meet them where they are at in that moment with their level of fitness, their level of coordination, their level of attitude towards themselves and their abilities and confidence, and say, by the end of the 90-minute session, what we'd like to do is get you to this point where you walk away and go, I understand what the poles are now, I felt something from it, I've got a smile on my face, but it's not for me, or yes, it is for me and I want to do some more of it, and or yes, I want to do some more of it and I want to get some of those, the long list of the benefits, like toning your body, improving your cardiovascular fitness across your body and things like that. So I want to go away, come to some of the regular classes, and if you see me doing it not as well as I could do, can you support me? And again, that we have now in the team a bunch of instructors, a bunch of walk leaders, and it's freely open to all the members to turn up and walk and then go for a coffee and a cake. And we have a load of members who like to just really go for the coffee and the cake and the chinwag, but they enjoy also the walk beforehand, and they know that that's part of getting to that coffee and the cake. Then we have other people who like to maybe go up, like you said, you went up Catbells recently. We used to participate because there are some national events where we might do 10k events. So up at Grasmere, there's a 10k event, which is a number of runs, 5 and 10, and something longer distance runs, but then Nordic walking was incorporated into that. So at one point in time, I was the fastest Nordic walker in the UK. But at that moment in time, that was because I was wanting to just prove to myself or other people that can be a level that you can achieve and attain if you want to, but it doesn't have to be like that.
What speed would that be at then that you got to?
I did 10k in about an hour,
Right.
So it's obviously nothing like running, but it is.
Someone looks at that as a okay, I'm getting into running 10k an hour, like okay, happy, that's sort of like the first. You
probably
fast.
Walk at a reasonable sort of 4-5k is at a reasonably brisk pace. 6, you're starting to sort of get your heart rate up, and depending on your level of health and fitness, but 6k is a nice brisk walk. Going faster than that, you've really got to sort of put some effort into it. But you can achieve that through using the poles. But back to the Grasmere Gallop race, that is around the Grasmere Lake in the Lake District, so Rydal Water and Grasmere. And there are ups and downs. And what we noticed as all the hundreds of Nordic walkers who were participating in next to the runners. The runners had all set off, the Nordic walkers had all set off, but they'd be at the back of the group. And then you carry on and you get some of the faster runners would be finishing in sort of 30 minutes, whatever it might be. And you'd have across the field different people getting to different parts of the walk where there are some, inclines. And you quite often find a lot of the runners who get to the incline, and at the bottom they start going, and struggling to get up the top. And at that point, the Nordic walkers would catch up and they just blast up to the top because of the technique and the use of the poles to get you up. And then on the way back down, the runner would catch up to the Nordic walker and then run past them on the way down. And there's a technique for going up a hill and going down a hill that is both supportive to your joints and your body and your stability and your ability to get down safely. But to that point, whatever age you are and what level of fitness you are, you can look at that as an aid to improving your performance or your ability to get through a course. So quite often a lot of people will get into running, they'll then go into trail running, they'll then go into kind of ultra distance running. And now in the last sort of probably 5 years, a lot of ultra runners have started to pick up the Nordic walking technique and buy the collapsible poles. They've got poles that collapse into 4 pieces. They fit in either on the vest in the front or in the back of the rucksack. And they'll probably run the majority of the race without poles. But then they'll get to that point where halfway, 3/4 of the way through a longer run, either at a hill or when they're more fatigued and tired because they're just, they've done 30 miles, whatever it might be, they might then start walking with the poles, or they might use them to get up the hill, and then they might use them either to get down or just go back to running again. So.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that in the lakes. Like, not loads, but I have seen people who look like they're on a trail run that have poles hanging off them from somewhere, from the bag or what have you. So I suppose, like you said before, it's an opportunity for someone to be met where they're at. And a lot of people are put off, say, joining the gym, for example, because they fear that everyone in the gym is really fit and not like them,
Wearing
and
lycra
really
in the
slim
gym,
and has six-pack and all that sort of stuff. When obviously that's not the case. There are obviously people in there who've been in the gym environment for a very long time, and they are what someone would define as fit and healthy and look good and stuff. But then there's also people that are on the journey that they're on as well. But nonetheless, it can be fearful to step into that. And on the running side of things, I think most people think, oh, I'm just gonna go running. So I'm just gonna put my trainers on tomorrow. I'm just gonna run, and then they run for 200 meters, and then they need to stop because not only are they not fit enough to run, but
Shin
their body
splints,
cannot handle it. Yeah, the impact and what have you. So I feel like what you're doing is a real good, again, to use the term, entry-level thing initially. Obviously, you can progress it, but for someone who is at ground zero, is a very low-impact way that they can get into doing some great cardio, physical activity.
I'd rather someone come off the couch, come and learn how to walk with the poles, under supported guided tuition, build up the fitness, look after the joints, start working on other aspects of their health, whether that's the nutrition, the weight, whatever else it might be. And if they want to do running, because that they did it in the past and they lost their mojo or their ability or had injury, whatever it might be, they want to get back into that, that's fine. Or if they've just been inspired by you putting out a podcast or a video and seeing you running and talking about how they can improve their health, if they want to go into running, that is fantastic. And let's help you get there sooner and better than trying to go from the couch and get into a point where you again hit that obstacle because you create an injury for yourself, or you lose the motivation because of not knowing how to move forward through any challenges.
And a lot of people do like couch to 5K, for example, which I think has its pros and has its cons. And I know loads of people that have tried to do it and stopped because they can't even handle day one. And so instead of people, we're segueing slightly here, but instead of people saying, oh, I'm going to go and run a 5K, or I'm going to go out and go for a run tomorrow, it should start with, I'm going to go out, and this could be with poles, without poles, whatever. Let's go for a walk, and let's do that, and let's build that up slowly. And I feel like what you do is a much, I don't want to use the term easier, but is a much more welcoming entry level for someone. And maybe not enough promotion is done around the benefits of Nordic walking for people who aren't in a position to go out and go for a run, or they maybe fear of the gym and whatever, and would need the benefits also of getting outside in nature, etc., which brings us back to the topic of mental health and what is done generally and what is promoted around helping improve people's mental health. One thing I find when I'm walking is, this is both with me and the people that I walk with, the conversations that you have, you would not normally have. So, even if it's me sitting in the pub with a friend, or if it's me in the gym, or me talking to a client in a one-to-one session, for whatever reason, the conversation when you're out in nature in the open is very different, and you're much more open. And I think you have conversations that maybe are beneficial to unloading and just maybe getting someone just to listen to you for a little bit, or even getting to know people on a much deeper, more personal level, which I've found from going out and doing walks. Does that happen within the community that you have, and does that happen straight away? Because I know you're potentially looking at a sort of one-to-one model where you can help people on that level as well. But do you find if someone comes into your community, they find the benefits of that in a mental health, and I don't know if unloading is the right word, but do they experience that pretty quickly?
Yes. If you got a load of our members, regular members, in a room and asked them a load of questions, they would say that they feel like the group is a family. Always this thing with the opening up, it's partly to do with the expansiveness of the outdoor space. It is also, we are now looking at each other, and we go through life of, we're in the workplace and we've got the performance review or the meeting with the boss or whatever it is, that face-to-face in an office, sat down, it's restrictive, it's constrictive, it's closing us down. Just by standing up, we are opening ourselves up. Just by being in the outdoors, we are not trapped by four walls. Because we are not looking at each other in the eyes, we are not constrained in that way. Being side by side, walking together, we are not opposing each other, we are together. And that allows this whole spaciousness and this ability to kind of offload. And this kind of goes on to this area of where I'm taking my, I don't want to say coaching, but the sharing of the awareness and the experience that I've gained over the last 10 years, being in the outdoor space for that long and being with so many people. That is my next stage of expression and development. But back to the group as a whole, both locally and nationally, it's not that we are special in any way because we are doing Nordic walking, or that we've created a walking group. The fact that we are outdoors with people side by side, and we are facilitating that safe space for someone to meet up, not get lost, get back to the car at the end of the session, go for a coffee and a cake, that breaks down a lot of those barriers. And the reality is, walking or not, we all have 60-odd thousand thoughts going on each day. We all have our home life, our kids, our monetary situation, our career challenges, aspirations. We all have a whole bunch of stuff going on, and we all really do need to just open that sort of steam valve and let that stuff out. And we all have different ways of doing that, and what happens is quite often people lose the awareness and the ability to know how to do that. And so, as a good coach, as a personal trainer, as a Nordic walking instructor, as a breathwork instructor, or whatever it might be, just allowing someone to use breath or use walking or use physical activity to dissipate some of that stress through the activity is good, but then allowing someone just to be sick on the plate, so to speak, get that stuff out of them, and that naturally happens. What I suppose with the walking group, as we facilitate it locally and nationally, very strategically, but it's not written in the benefits of what Nordic walking is that we are curating that space for people to offload. We're creating a peer group that we lead around a route, so people get, and we prompt to, look at the trees, listen for the birds, this, that, and the other. But I can just leave them to walk down the avenue at Avon Park with the River Ribble on the right hand side, and I'll say at the end, turn left because we're going to go that way. And quite often they'll just completely miss that turning and carry straight on because they've managed to get into a conversation, and that conversation is much less superficial. Hello, how are you doing? It starts to get better and better. And this was a fundamental thing that we noticed with lockdown was we couldn't take people out walking, but what we did facilitate after the point of people being allowed to walk with somebody else, which was several weeks and months down the line, of our members, we created WhatsApp groups of people in specific wards of Preston. So if I was in Ashton, a load of members who were in the Ashton area, we were supporting them to communicate and say, I'm available today, is anyone else? Yes, I'm available. So they'd go and meet, and they then started to have that walk and talk together as just the two of them. Whereas previously we had the group walk sessions. Saturday morning we might have had 10 people, we might have had up to 40, 50 people together that were managed by a team of that we trained up as our volunteer walk leaders. And in an hour-long walk with 50 people, you might say hello to 50% of them. You might chat and along the walk say hello and have a little bit of a conversation. How's your week been? This, that, and the other, with 5 people. But in that post-COVID era, people were meeting together. They might then in Ashton go and walk at Haslam Park, and they then start saying, "Well, how are you? How's it going? And I don't really know what your family's like. Have you got kids?" And they start to peel away some of those layers, get a little bit deeper, find a little bit more about them, what the work life was, what they're doing now, and that just completely transforms that conversation, that relationship with people. And that then, after that, as we went back into the group walking, that created that family, that friendship, that ability to, I'm meeting that person on a Saturday, I'm going to really find out what's going on with the kids, what they're struggling with right now, because they mentioned it last week. I'm going to check in with them and just make sure that they've got through that pain or that problem, or that they're doing okay.
Yeah, it's definitely a case of and I think getting across this to someone who, thinks going for a walk or a hike or whatever sounds like their idea of hell because it's hard, right? They're going to get out of breath and they're unfit. So for me to then go on to say you relax much more to have this conversation, maybe the first or second time they might not relax so much and they're focused on how difficult it is and how out of breath they are and how much they can feel the heart racing and all of that stuff. But you learn to deal with that a little better and you get a little fitter and you understand it a little bit more. But that relaxes everything else psychologically, which is why those conversations, I believe, tend to start. And I think you're right, we all do need that because life's 100 million miles an hour doing whatever else it is that you need to do. And like you say, the expansiveness of nature and the openness definitely opens them conversations up even more. And I find also that, you hear people say, "Oh, I've had that idea in the shower" or whatever, which I could have from time to time. But more often than not, I have ideas out whilst I'm walking because, again, I'm
Massive
just
for
not
creativity.
thinking about work specifically, or I'm not worried about a particular deadline, or I'm not doing this or that, or thinking about money or, whatever. I'm just out with the dog, walking the dog. But the problem with that for me often is I have this idea and I'm like, oh, shit.
Where am I
Right,
going to write that down?
I'll write down on my notes on my phone now, and I sort of ruin that a little bit by getting the phone out. But it does definitely open up that creativeness, and when you're in the presence of someone else, just that openness. And even if you were to go away and do that with just your partner, let's say you've not spoke to your partner properly for the whole week or whatever, I guarantee you can have a better, more relaxed conversation if you just hop off and go out for a walk together than if you're all uptight and in the house and thinking about how much needs to be done. So it doesn't necessarily just need to be in an environment like with me at the gym or with you out walking. People can benefit from just getting outside more and just allowing that to let them relax a little bit.
Definitely.
So if someone wants to get involved with walks and what you do, how do they go about that?
Very easily. We're on Instagram. Maybe our age group is not so frequent on there, but we do have a profile on there. On Facebook, we have a website. So it can be just the standard national website, walx.co.uk, or our site local to Preston is Walx Preston, walxpreston.co.uk. Go on the website and then you can read a bunch of information about the group, about Nordic. Well, Walx now specifically is about walking and walking well. The utilisation of the poles is a separate element. What has also happened is over the years there was specific Nordic walking teaching. There's been a slight flip on that through the Walx brand into they've created their own strapless poles. So Nordic walking poles are two separate poles, and you have a glove strap that fits on your hands. You have a right glove and a left glove, and you clip yourself into your poles, of which that is different to trekking poles where you might have a loop strap and you kind of just have your hand through the loop and you hold on to the pole. And quite often trekking poles will be the one pole, some people might have the two, but you've very much got a stiff shoulder, bent elbow, and you are putting the pole out in front of you and you are almost using it for balance and support. And that's where you'll see a lot of people in the Lake District will have those trekking poles. And unusually, there is quite a resistance to walking with the two poles for people who've been into trekking with poles. The next level up from that are the strapless poles, which are proprietary to Walx. So they are an ergonomic handle. The handle is angled forward and angled in slightly. It allows the wrist to sit more naturally. And everything about that is that you are holding the poles to facilitate both prompt upright posture, but relaxed, and allow you to activate from the shoulder into the handle of the pole and into the ground to push the ground away behind you, to then take weight off the joints and to propel you forward. And you can do that slow or you can do that fast. And I don't know, I lost my train of thought there. But
You were going through the difference between trekking poles, those, and then Nordic poles, which, to be fair, I didn't know. So when I was talking before about the guy that brought poles to Peru, I'm guessing he had trekking poles. And when you mentioned it, I think that was right. I think it had just like a loop on that would go around the wrist. I think that's what the other guide used as well.
So you can walk in that style of swinging from the shoulder with the poles angled back with trekking poles. There is more of a likelihood that you're going to have to hold on to the pole more tightly. Holding on to something more tightly is creating that tension in the hand into the forearm, into the shoulder, which ultimately is not just Nordic walking instructors, but people of a level of awareness about removing the tension from the mind and the body. We're wanting to remove and alleviate that tension that comes from thinking too hard about problems, or sitting behind a desk and kind of holding that tension, or having issues with your colleagues or your boss or whatever else, your work, whatever it might be. So changing from a trekking pole to a Nordic walking pole with a glove strap, you can apply the pressure through the strap into the ground, but you're not holding on tightly, so you're kind of removing that tension that's going up your arm into your shoulder. The strapless pole, you are holding on to the pole, but you've got a loose grip with your fingers that allows you to apply the pressure through the pole into the ground, but you can also drop them if you want to, because part of the concept, the Walx concept of what's called total body walking is we might go on a walk, use the poles, we might walk slow, we might walk fast, we might do intervals, we might go up and down hills, utilising the terrain for improvements in cardiovascular fitness and strength, whatever. But we might then put the poles down and we might lean against a tree that's upright or a log that's on the ground and do some press-ups, standing press-ups or angled press-ups, or do some bum sits. So we might sort of bend our knees, squats effectively onto the log. So the strapless poles facilitate the ease of an outdoor fitness class kind of session, a total body walking session, more easily. But again, it's always important for anyone to be aware that we can create the gym in the outdoor space, but we're not necessarily having to do that. We don't have to have a preconceived worry, or I'm going to have to walk fast because I'm walking with the poles, or this group's established, so I'm not going to get into that. If anyone, you as a personal trainer, you will have a welcoming nature to that individual. Anyone who might join our group or any of the groups across the country, that person has lived experience of dealing with other people, meeting them where they're at, and creating that ability to get them over their preconceived anxieties and tensions to get them started on that journey from the couch or from their level of fitness, because they're in the gym, they want to do a challenge to raise money for a charity, and they're going to do the 3 peaks. My suggestion from coming from the couch, which you sort of brought me to, was it'd be better to kind of go through our training and get yourself fit slowly using the poles, to then move into sort of more higher intensity or impact type activities. And again, the same if you're going to go on a challenge type walk, whether it's cat bells or you're going to do 3 peaks or something, there are advantages for learning the technique and using the poles. And you might not be interested in joining our regular group every week to do that. That might not be your thing. You might not have the time, might not have the interest, but you can gain something from learning the technique and applying yourself and the poles together for your own benefit, to get up the hill, get down the hill, take the weight off the joints, improve your overall body health, fitness, strength, that will give you better resilience for dealing with that 3 peaks, as it might be, as a challenge.
Yeah, I can think of so many people that within my sort of client roster, if you will, that have no intention of coming on the hikes. And then there are people that I know they might not ever say it, but they'd probably like to go, but don't think that they can do it. And I think something like that, and having the ability to take some of the stress off and ultimately make it feel a bit easier and therefore be more enjoyable, would potentially help those people, if that makes sense.
The standard model we have nationally is what we call the power of poles. It's a 90-minute session where we put the poles in your hand. We talk you through that process of standing tall, walking well, relaxing the tension in your body, and starting to walk with the poles. What we've learnt with the innovation of the ergonomic strapless poles is I can get someone to walking reasonably well within about 10-15 minutes with the strapless poles, where it used to take a little bit longer with the strapped Nordic walking poles. So that's a great innovation in and of itself, because I can just very quickly get someone to feel it. And again, it's all about the feeling. But within the confines of that 90-minute session, part of that is getting the coordination, getting moving with the poles, feeling the activation into the ground, feeling where you are feeling it in the body, that you're activating the tummy, the back of the arms, up the back, and then going into the hill. So it's not to make you have to walk a hill, but there are so many people who've joined, taught over 1,000 people in Preston over the last 10 years. So many people do come and say, you know what, my husband walks up the hill and I can't keep up with him, or he walks fast and I can't keep up with him. But the hill, that thing, I just don't want to do hills. It's either I can't do hills anymore. I used to love the Lake District, but I can't go anymore because I can't come down because of my knees. Or it's I don't like going up hills because I'm out of breath and I can't get up. And the fact that you are turning yourself into a four-legged creature with the posture and the technique of using the poles, you get yourself up and you get to the top, and you get yourself up where you've used your strength of your upper body to take some of the pressure off the legs. So you get up and you go, holy shit, that was so much different to what I perceived or what I'd experienced in my former life. And then coming down, there's a technique of bending into your knees and sitting back into the slope as you're going down, where you're not toppling forward and effectively jarring your knees going down the hill. So just that element of the parapole session is a real eye-opener, but in a physical feeling and a confidence sense. That works very well.
Yeah, because when people do come, and even when they find it tough, like on the hikes that I organise and stuff, when you get a clear day, which is not always, but you can see the views, it obviously makes it worth it. But the people that don't do it through fear of those things either going up or going down or what have you, if they can find a way, a system, which yours is, to alleviate that, then I would massively encourage them, if they're listening, to look at that, because then you get to experience those views, you get to experience that openness, just being out in nature, and the ability to enjoy being out there, essentially. So I think I would recommend that massively. In terms of someone coming and enjoying it and making progress, have you had people go off and do, bigger treks, trails, walks, Europe, rest of the world kind of thing as a result of you teaching them to Nordic walk?
Yes, locally, yes, nationally. Whatever someone may want to do, that comes from their own inspiration or personal mission or desire. In our group locally, we've done the 3 national peaks. So not everyone, but a bunch of us. There are some of our members who like to go for the coffee and the cake type walk, and they've no interest whatsoever in doing the peaks or anything like that. We've done walks along the canals that we have, so the Lancaster Canal, Leeds-Liverpool Canal. Some of our members have been on the Camino Trail. So again, it is individual to that person. There are instructors and groups across the country who go abroad and do like mini holidays that may be the likes of winter time, a bit of walking, a bit of snowshoeing, a bit of cross-country skiing. But the fact that you've done that Nordic walking or learnt to walk with the poles, you've got that kind of affinity to that sort of thing. Or they may go to Austria, for example, in the summer, which is just as beautiful, if not more, in the summer than it is in the winter. But there are mountains and big hills and things like that. And if you have learnt the technique, become familiar with it, become suitably self-confident in utilising that technique and those poles, and you know how to get up and down and enjoy those benefits, then it can massively change and improve your experience of that holiday or that trip in that environment.
That's the key thing, isn't it? I think that's a good way to close this. It's like, if you're someone who, not necessarily, you don't have to be sort of someone who experiences challenges in walking. However, if you are, this might be the thing that opens up the opportunity for you to be able to enjoy those experiences. And then I would imagine you're going to want to continue on with that anyway, because if it makes walking easier, then why the hell would you not carry on with that, you know? Yeah. So yeah, I think that's been really useful. So thank you very much for that. Again, just quickly, in case people forgot before, where can people find out more about Walx?
So the Walx national site, walx.co.uk, or the Walx Preston site, walxpreston.co.uk. So there's no hyphen, all one word, Walx Preston. My picture, my face is on there. My number is on there. Anyone can phone me anytime, ask any questions. We have it is an online booking system, so you can register with the website for free. If somebody wants, I can send them a code. They can choose to book a walk and use the code to discount that to $0. They can just phone up and say, I've seen this podcast, I was intrigued in this way or that. Can you explain a bit more? And yeah, my door is always open.
Amazing. We'll get all that information and stuff in the notes for everyone. But Matt, thank you very much for coming on. Appreciate it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in for today's episode. I hope you found that useful and valuable. If you'd like to hear more from us, all you need to do is hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next episode.